Okay, so we just have a few things to button up this meeting. Patrick, can you give us an update on what's happening with the Fen Farm, please?
There was a conference call between Stockbridge Land Trust and the tribe today, and I have not gotten a readout on the call. I talked to Rich. Did I really say just that again? I talked to Rich about 4 hours ago, and he was trying to set it up and get to it, but obviously he works during the day at Rockwell, so I did not hear from him yet.
Okay.
So
we said we would put 300,000 aside for the purchase of the property or whatever else. But it's looking as though we may not need that if the Muncie tribe goes for it on their own.
until we know for sure,
Yeah.
we can pull it in real time at the town meeting. So
Yeah, so the suggestion has been made that we should leave that as it is, the 300,000 in that pot. And if it turns out by town meeting that we don't need it, we can just pull it from the warrant and it'll stay it'll stay in our fund.
it'll stay in but it's my understanding that if we do that, then, and there's no vote, then it won't be in open space. It'll just be in the general fund.
Right.
And
Why is there that understanding?
I reached out to the lawyers and confirmed that. They said if you take no action at town meeting, that it would just revert right to the general fund. It's as if that article wasn't there.
Okay,
So the money is there. And if we were to have some project that we wanted, to weigh in on, we could always meet again and we could, make a vote to put that money towards some project that we thought was worthy.
no,
not much time between now and the town meeting.
No, we can't. There's probably nothing going to happen between now and town meeting,
Okay.
but we could, obviously the town would have to approve anything that we,
Correct.
that we would recommend to them. But assuming that nothing comes up that we, since we don't really, there's nothing in the wind that I know of anyway that would come up that would require that. But we could meet, and there's going to be a town meeting in the fall. Am I correct on that?
yeah, we're going to be voting on the regional school district merger in May, and those are going to go before all the towns for a special town meeting in September, October.
So we have.
District merger on the school.
On the school, South Berkshire and Berkshire Hills merger, that is a
The schools,
yeah.
yeah.
The
Absolutely.
districts, not the schools.
Absolutely. The districts, right.
Yeah, so if we did have something come before us that we wanted to address,
It's
we could look at it at that meeting rather than
Yeah.
having to have a special
That's right.
town
That's right.
meeting, which is expensive and
Now, now,
difficult.
and there's a chance in the event that for whatever reason, the current potential deal falls through, there's a chance that Stockbridge Land Trust and BNRC will come up with a alternative plan than the one that's currently being discussed. And if that's the case, I would hope that the warrant article is phrased in such a way to give the Stockbridge Land Trust the maximum flexibility in terms of, putting together the Fen Farm deal.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're good with that. And the other thing that we were considering was the 50,000 for Pine Woods. And we have folks here from Pine Woods, June and Kathy from Construct and Jane. And so our vote was that the $50,000 would need to be signed off on by Construct. If you want to take advantage of that money to do an engineering study of the property. but we don't have a letter of agreement from you, which we would have to have in order for that to be done, because it's private property and
Hey Sally, there's an issue on this one. Michael and Erica are going to both make the case for, we want to implement grant agreements as a town. And we can put all the conditions in a grant agreement, which is enforceable, whereas a letter from Construct is not. And so I think based on, I'm speaking for you guys, but based on their recommendation, we should simply approve the 50,000 with a grant agreement that requires whatever we need in terms of the terms and conditions, approval to proceed. And that covers us in terms of this letter, because obviously if they won't accept the grant without the conditions, and I think, Erica, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I put copies of draft grant agreements in everybody's paperwork there. They can be pretty simple. They don't have to be outrageously long, but it does allow for stipulations for if you want to get this money, you need to meet ABC requirements.
I would submit a comment on this, if I might. The grant agreement, to the best of my knowledge, is a document that was developed by council, town council, right? Donna Brewer. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And basically, this is a document that really has far-reaching applications even beyond the Pine Woods Construct situation. This might be something that we could consider implementing in all of our, with all of our allocations, if you will. So that we're not in a situation where we pick one and not another. This should be a blanket type of thing. I mean, it's a terrific idea, because basically it's a legal document. There are caveats in it. The caveats have to be spelled out before money is allocated. And why not?
That is the plan, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Does that have to come before the town meeting, the grant agreement, or can we recommend that as this committee?
Michael, can you speak to that, please?
So grant assurance agreements are typically used like during, anytime we handed out ARPA funds, we were required to have one. And my understanding is CPC, we're generally supposed to have them too. And really what it does is, like Eric pointed out, they can be very simple, but they can hit what requirements we want to place on them. And that would be from the administration of the town through the board. So if you guys said like the following steps, the CPC committee said the following steps are the steps we want them to take, we put it right in the grant agreement. This is, in order to get the 50,000, you're agreeing to do the following. Boom, boom, boom. Point 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a simple process. It protects the town. I'd say 99% of the time we don't need them, but that one time we need one because somebody didn't do something with the money right, that's when we're going to get called out on it. And that's why I think that it's important for us to just get in a best practice issuing these, even for the smallest of projects, can just be a very simple one saying this is what's agreed upon and this is how it will be used. And then if it's not used in that capacity, we have something to come back on, or if it's, there's always a chance that somebody uses it in a very inappropriate way. And one of the big requirements is that they maintain whatever financial records, communications and other stuff so that we know we have a record of what's been done. So.
Michael, is this a commonly used document with respect to other town community preservation committees?
No matter what, when we're giving out money to a nonprofit or non-government organization, we should be using a grant assurance letter. The most recent one we did was when we went with the BCAC for set aside money in order for Stockbridge residents to do home improvements. And in there, we just stipulated, that they maintain the records for us. They'd report back to us which homes benefited from it. And we put the stipulation that it was only for Stockbridge residents because they served more than that. Those were the only three, and those were the only three we placed on from the select board. So I made sure that those were continued into it. So like I said, it's not something that has to go to town meeting, but it is something that creates a legal document of what the conditions are.
So would it be appropriate for this committee to pass a motion to say that henceforward, our protocol will be to have
I think it would be, but I'd like to kind of stick with this for a few minutes before we do that. Because we were a little bit of an impasse in that we did not have permission or a letter from Construct saying that they would agree to the terms of what we were going to grant. So June or whoever would like to comment on
Happy
that.
to speak to that. This is Jane. Jane Ralph. I'm the executive director of Construct, and we manage Pine Woods. I guess we're pretty confused about the whole process since we were encouraged to apply on our own, which we did, and never heard anything about any questions about that or when you wanted to meet with us. And yet then a decision was made to fund the Affordable Housing Trust. In principle, I fully support the Affordable Housing Trust managing the money for affordable housing, but that was not something we were preparing for. And it's not a use of funds that we particularly would prioritize at this time.
You wouldn't prioritize getting the study done to figure out what investments are needed at Pine Woods?
We have the information we need. We don't see the need for additional studies.
We don't have that information.
Right,
But-
because that's not what we were asking for.
Yeah, that's not the point.
Okay. I think we withdraw the 50,000. Right? They just said they didn't need it.
Okay, so you would not be supportive of a engineering study at this time?
Not at this time, no. June, if you want to speak to it further, you're welcome to.
Well, two things. I'd like to say that it's really common for a CPA to have a grant agreement. Most of the other towns that we work with do that. But as far as this is concerned, that answers the question about the 50,000 that the Housing Trust is asking for. But can we get an answer on the grant that we applied for? Is that still active?
Well, that's a good question. Look at mine. I think we are slightly confused as well because there were a number of.
We actually did, we voted on this, Sally, and the request to do a bond was declined by this committee. And Jane, I will just point out to you that your colleague from Berkshire Housing came into the Affordable Housing Trust and suggested that Pine Woods needed $3 to $5 million in investment. Okay, I wrote a residential inclusionary bylaw to try to figure out how we address that required investment. But it is my understanding that whether it's state funds or town funds or any other funds, we're going to need to know what this need is to help you.
We applied for the need.
Let me finish, please. The reason why the $900,000 bond didn't go through, and frankly, I didn't support it, was if the need is $3 to $5 million and we're going to borrow for 15 years to support a third to a fifth of the need, we're going to need more information as a town to support your efforts. And I think I've been a pretty loud voice, as I generally am, in support of affordable housing. But you're going to need to work with us to share information. So if you have all the information available to you, please share it, because you have allies in this town, but we need the information.
I appreciate that. And we would be happy to work with something longer term going forward, but we have immediate needs for the driveway and the boilers, and we will have the other needs that are outlined in our application. So that's the place where we wanted to start. And that's the place we still want to start. And as far as the bond goes, we were encouraged to apply for it with the understanding that it was likely that we wouldn't get it. And therefore we prioritized the expenses in the budget that we put forward.
Also, I'd like to say our colleague from Berkshire Housing has never been to Pine Woods. And we did submit to the Stockbridge Housing Association our capital needs assessment, which outlines the needs that we have.
So
That's what we're basing our request on.
we approved the driveway request.
Oh,
So,
great.
yeah, so it was the other one, the $50,000 for 1, 2, 3, 4, for 5 years to be bonded or
It's
not.
for 15 years.
I think just to bear out what the chair of the select board has said, I think without some type of commitment like we're talking about here, we're exposing the town to a liability situation. And I don't feel that that's real prudent to do at this point in time. You know, I think it's important that we have a partnership, and in a partnership, the two parties have to understand what the role of each would be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to that end, Rainey and I have started meeting, and we're strengthening that relationship, I would say. But with the application that was due in January, we again went with the most immediate needs that we had.
Right.
So we have your application, which itemized boilers, driveway, appliances, flooring, community building, stove, siding repairs, tree work, and roofing.
Correct.
And some of those things, like the appliances, are not going to be approvable under CPA.
I realized that after the fact. We were under the impression that repairs of those appliances would not be approvable, but the appliances were. But I understand that we are mistaken about that.
Yeah, it would be, it has a lifetime that is not something we can talk about.
Correct. Totally understand that.
And, the question for us is always, is it repair work that should have been done? Or is it, maintenance, in other words?
I would say these are preservation issues, is to preserve affordable housing, especially, well, all of it really.
So that's kind of what we need to decide, but still.
We're thrilled with 150 for the driveway, and I commit to working with the Affordable Housing Trust for a more coordinated effort next year. There just wasn't time to do that this year.
So, like I said, I'm a little confused as to where we're at in this.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
May I speak?
Yep.
Jane,
Can you come up to the table, Randy?
So she can be sure she can hear you.
No, come up to the
Just-
podium.
Yeah, just, either one. The speaker's only goes so far.
Okay.
Okay.
Jane, hi, assume you can see me. Thank you, both of you, for coming. I'm really confused. Based on our meeting, I think we at the trust are very clear that we don't have the information to fund any of those things that have been requested. You did approve funds that we would work with you to get the information that we need. Now, if you have the structural report, the architectural report, the code report, and the other engineering reports that that have been done, then I think we would be in a position to fund some of that work. And Sally, it's my understanding you voted two things. One, you voted against the funding the bond. And two, you voted to fund the reports that we outlined in our request, which I gave to you, right, Jane? You saw that, what we requested.
Yes.
Okay. And two, you also funded what we called an emergency fund of $50,000 so that any of the things that go wrong in the next year that you need, I had hoped you would maybe increase that to 75.
So we only funded that at 25.
No, you funded it at 50.
Okay.
And I had hoped that you would consider increasing that to 75, but you haven't yet done that. And that would be funds that we would have available to you upon request, and we, the trust could act quickly if you have emergency needs.
25.
While these studies were being prepared so that a fulsome approach could be taken to all the repairs that are needed. Now, that's our understanding, but maybe, I wasn't my understanding from our meeting, Jane, that you had the structural, the engineering, the architectural, and the code information. But if I'm wrong, please, could you,
well, I'd like to speak to the funding for our proposal at this time. And what I heard Sally say was that 150,000 was approved for the driveway.
Yes, but that was approved last year, wasn't it, Sally?
No, we approved additional funding for the driveway this year.
Did you?
I thought it was 75,000.
Yeah.
I thought it was the last 2 years.
No, we didn't approve any more money
We
because
were planning on a 3-year process, and we came back with that as part of the third year request.
okay, Erica, what funds have been actually expended on the driveway so far?
I believe 51,000. Between COVID and rain, it's been a longer process to get the driveway done than we had hoped.
Yep, but didn't we do 80,000 a year? What was it the last 2 years?
It was 75.
It was 75,000 each of the past years. And again, with the increase in costs, that's why we came back to request another 150,000. June can speak to that in more detail.
Right, but hasn't about 2/3 of the driveway been completed? I was just down there.
No, just the first layer.
Just 1/3 of, the first layer of 1/3 of the driveway. It's
does
maybe a
that
little
mean?
more than a third.
What do you mean first layer? Is that like to,
They said they were coming back to do another layer on that.
oh, okay, great, okay.
Could I ask a question on that? It's my understanding that that was supposed to be engineered because we have some drainage, there is drainage problems.
Yes,
And was it engineered? There wasn't any
Yes.
bill. There wasn't a bill for engineering services that, because I was the one that approved it and gave it to Erica when it was just paid, what, the last couple of months, right? And that was for like $70,000, was it? Erica?
51,000, I believe.
Oh, 51, okay. So, so just as a question, was there pre-engineering or was the soil pre-engineered before you put that first layer down?
June, I know there was excavation by Wilkinson before, and they are, I believe, are overseeing it. You can speak to it more than I can.
Right. So they did repair some of the drainage that was at fault. There was a pipe that had broken and heaved up, and they have worked on that. Unfortunately, I have a very hard time getting any documentation from this crew, so I don't have details that I can give you. You all know Wayne, so if someone has a way of getting that from him, that would be great.
Sally?
Yes.
I think one of the thoughts here, if you will, is there are a lot of pieces, and we're trying to get an overview as to the aggregate of these pieces and then prioritize them based on need. I think that's where the situation of the study comes in and the engineering. You know, this would be a prudent representation and use of the town's money. You know, we need to know what the aggregate situation is, what the priorities are, what the timeframes are, and that's why it was proposed that there would be an agreement on your behalf to work with us on that.
Yeah, I think, Jane, just to be as clear as possible, it's my understanding that the procedure that the trust understands, and if we're incorrect, we're very happy to be corrected, but that we needed this information. And I know there's some issues with the town has served you with some code issues, that there's information that needs to be gathered about, particularly I'm concerned about the structural integrity there, and investing in appliances and boilers and things that I know you may need before we know whether the buildings are structurally sound, I think is really important. And I think it's very important to have that. I think in your needs, your assessment, that's one of the important things that they said was the next step was getting the structural engineering study. Now, maybe you've already done that or had that. Is that correct? I mean, I guess a real question.
Again, I'm speaking to the application that we submitted, not to, I mean, we were encouraged to apply on our own. That's what we did. And so it feels like this has changed midstream without our knowledge. And yes, Rainey, you and I talked about it, but we haven't been in conversation with the CPA about this. And as I said, we applied as we were encouraged to on our own.
When Michael had his hand up, can we let Michael address? Sally?
Yes.
I was just gonna address it, so 51,000's been spent on the driveway to date,
I believe that's what it was.
and there's still roughly 100,000 remaining.
No, one.
75.
It was 75,000 each of the last 2 years, and you were asking for additional?
Our
Yes.
total bid by Wayne and Wilkinson was $300,000.
300,000. All right,
That's what they said the total thing would cost.
and they've already done the base? and
They've
the-
done the base on part
Partially.
of the driveway.
All right, so they have top coat. All right. Just trying to understand, because usually the base and your stuff before the top coat,
Yeah.
50, it seems like 250 for a top coat when they.
No, they've only done a third of the base.
They've
And
only done, oh, all right, I think that's what I was having trouble on.
yeah, yep, no, they're a long way away.
All right. I just wanted a clarification on that.
Sure.
All right.
Okay. And do you,
And we're perfectly happy with putting all of the rest of the request on hold, and sorting through what we need to sort through going forward.
Okay, so let me try and figure out where we're at right now then. I can't find my paper that tells me everything I need to know in the world.
Jane, what do you feel is the schedule? Because this is now, we went through 2 construction seasons, and we got a third of the base coat done. I mean, there's another $100,000 there. How much more of the project should we plan to get done this year? And because the question I have is, can we continue making progress with the 100,000 that is already available?
There's also another issue where at this point in the season, we don't even know if we can get a contractor to do it. These people are booked up months in
We have.
advance.
Well, they've already started the project, so they are planning to come back. We don't have a firm date, but all winter they say when the macadam factory opens, and then you're right, they got behind on Windrush, so they're probably still there, and all we can do is just keep asking. We don't have a lot of choices of contractors to work with, but because they've started, we are counting on them to come and finish it.
But I guess my question is just, based on these factors in the market, are we going to be able to make progress beyond what another 100,000 will pay for? For this season, because we'll have another CPC round, obviously coming, starting next December,
I thought you already voted on that.
We already voted on the 100,000. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. It's like,
Can we just clarify how much it is? Because I thought I heard 150,000.
the 150, you just said that you spent 50 of the 150, 51 of the
No,
100.
but Sally, didn't she say we were approved for 150? Or did I hear that
This
wrong?
year is what I
This
understood.
year.
No, I don't think we did anything this year.
What? I thought the driveway was across.
Okay, so driveway,
It was the last 2 years, 75 each year. Right?
Yes, you're correct. 75 each year, the last 2 years, nothing this year.
So you've approved nothing that we've applied for this year.
Not yet.
Okay, so I guess, Patrick, the issue with that would be if they do come and finish it, then we can only pay them half of what they're gonna want. So that's kind of an issue. Then
I mean,
what do we do?
I gotta,
come on.
I can speak here.
Uh-huh.
So so you're saying that you went out to get quotes on the driveway, everything else, but it was only contingent on 100% funding from the town?
No, I'm saying we went out and got quotes on the driveway. We told them we had some of the money and we were still applying for more, and they started the work. So that's wonderful that they started. We came back to the town asking for the rest of the money. And Patrick is saying that you should not grant that money because they may not finish, but if they do finish.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm surprised that, because and once again, this started 2 years ago and then a year ago. But I thought the recollection I had was that it was going to be a $150,000 project. And we granted the first half the first year and the second half the second year. I had no idea that we're looking at.
It was never $150,000. It was 225 and then they went up to 300, but it was never
Oil
150.
prices, everything.
That's just what you had available in those years, and so that's what we asked for. That was actually your advice, Patrick, to ask for something like that.
Yeah.
So that might be something to consider in the future for
Correct.
applications and the rest, that if an application,
Right.
if are they, part of the grant agreement will be that the project is fully done. This is basically, if it's a $300,000 project to do the driveway, and we're going to agree to support it, then that should have either been bonded or something else in order to be done. If it's done in piecemeal like this, then
Puts the whole project at risk.
it puts the whole project at risk, or it's basically saying that that the town was committed to, which it never was, other than what's been voted at town meeting. So all that's been committed by the town is 150.
Right.
If we were to fully fund it, those are some of the pieces that we should be looking at.
But to no fault of constructs, I will point out that we're seeing this kind of inflation all over on these kinds of projects. And if we thought it was 225 and the town had so far put it in 150, that seems like a pretty good partnership right there. And now all of a sudden it's up 33% from 225 to 300. And now these guys are stuck because the vendors couldn't get there 2 years ago. So I don't think we're having an argument here. We're all in the same boat here.
Right.
Right, but the question I would have is that did you always intend for the town to fund the whole thing?
No, we've been trying to, I actually have a grant into TD Bank that we're supposed to hear from pretty soon. And we've tried a few other options. The trouble is, not everybody wants to fund affordable housing, but a fraction of those will fund any kind of rehabilitation or renovation work. So it gets harder and harder as the property gets older and older to find any sources.
So the one that we've been having difficulty trying to wrap our minds around is this one which was submitted having 50,000 in 24, 50,000 in 25, 26, 50, 50, 50. So it was 250,000 total.
Right, we understand that the bond is off the table.
But that money included the boilers, the driveway, the appliances, the flooring, the community building stove, the siding repairs, the tree work and roofing. And that was $992,000 and $600. So we got bogged down a little bit in the language of who was going to administrate it, and did we have letters of approval for the housing trust to supervise or oversee the project, and we got into conversation about the need for the structural reports, both from the architects and the engineers and all of those things, which we kind of felt like we didn't really have a grip on the whole thing. So the $150,000 that was included in your proposal for the driveway in the total for the $50,000 over the course of 5 years.
15, it was 15 years. They only put 5 on there, but they were looking for
Right.
15-year bond.
But yeah,
Is that-
so,
In this,
and then we had talked about the first $50,000 going toward the structural report. And that's where we got into a mire. And that's pretty much where we are at now, I think. So I think we need to think about it again, and clarify our thinking and how we want to proceed.
So the 50,000 over 15 years, that was assuming it was bonded. So that was basically
Right.
how the whole project was going to be funded, not how our end of it was going to be funded. When the bond went off the table, then the only part that's really relevant is the prioritized list of detail on the next page that starts with boilers, then driveway, and so forth.
But Jane, let me just kind of ask a practical question. As in June, I understand how difficult it is to finance these projects, but without understanding the full plan for financing the driveway even, I mean, you're raising some red flags here by kind of suggesting that we don't have the kind of the sort of commitments down to finish the project, because I don't know how paving works, but if you're only putting the base coat down, is it kind of gonna work if you don't do the top coat? I mean, I don't know.
I'm not saying that we're not going to do the top coat. They'll come back when they have time to come back. There's an awful lot of chiefs in this group, and we were advised to apply for bond funding. And so that is what we did. And now everyone's all horrified that we applied for bond funding.
No one's horrified.
It's
Okay.
horrified.
They just want to support-
The other thing that's different this year is there's never been this level of conversation. I'm actually really glad that there is. It's been a very simple process up till now, where the CPA has awarded a lot of money without a lot of information. So I do commend you for looking more deeply into this.
Yeah.
It's just not what the process has ever been. So
It's
that's
been a
where
simpler-
this doesn't make sense to me.
It's been a simpler request before. This is a complicated and multifaceted request that you're asking for, that we are still trying to, wrap our head around, because as we've said, things like the appliances are not going to be fundable from the CPA. And also trying to decide what is maintenance and should have been done on a regular basis, and what is approvable under CPA requirements. And that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Right. So again, I'd be comfortable with everything taken off the table except for the driveway, which already has precedence for funding. I would love for some boiler money as well, but I understand that may not be possible.
And as far as, the reference to maintenance, I would just like to point out that at Pinewoods, we get inspected at least 3 times a year. We get inspected by the LIHTC people. We get inspected by the Home Fund people. We get inspected by the AHTF people, and we get inspected for every single unit that has a subsidy at least once a year. Usually it's on an 8-month cycle. So almost all of our units get inspected every year. The property gets inspected every year. We have a fabulous record of compliance. We are never in violation of any of these inspections. They find small items which we fix, and then we are approved to go on to the next year. So, you know, there's been a recent kerfluffle with, you know, that some inspectors have come in and they found small items which we fixed that we didn't know about. So there's not been a system of neglect at Pine Woods. It's just a matter of doing things according to our budget. And at a certain time, appliances all die at once because of planned obsolescence. You know, they're meant to last 12 years. They've lasted 17 years. And now they're all starting to go. The boilers, the same thing. The boilers can still be fixed if you could get the parts, but the parts are no longer available. And so all of the boilers are starting to go one at a time, and they have to be replaced. They can no longer be repaired.
Sally, Michael has a point.
Just for consideration of this committee and with the Affordable Housing Trust, as far as the driveway, if you don't, I'm not sure how you're going to approach this, but one of the options you could do is take the 50,000 that was going to be to the study, just give it to the Affordable Housing Trust. Construct can then come to the Affordable Housing Trust and request the remaining balance to do their driveway.
Right.
That would give you guys 275,000 total in the trust that you can use for any affordable housing. If you move the 50 over, you then would be able to gives us time here, because the one advantage the Housing Trust has compared to this committee is once the money's been appropriated at town meeting, they can then allocate it. So that could be one option here. Instead of trying to fix this in one meeting here, turn the 50,000 over to the trust, gives them 275, have Construct go to the Affordable Housing Trust for the driveway.
Right.
And then my recommendation on how to maybe get us through this right now for this year.
And certainly that would give us a way to address at least the 75 and unanticipated costs due to inflation to finish this project. And you know, presuming that there was, you know, some monies available to do, because CPC doesn't tend to like to do 100% of the project, as you know. But I think that Michael's plan would allow us to potentially cover the increase in what the budget was going to be. As a way to further ensure that the project can be completed.
It would seem to me that in this entire process, we have to know, we're talking about the driveway. Is that correct? Only the driveway?
Yes.
Okay. We need to know what has to be done and what is the cost to finish that project and have a bid, a signed off document from a contractor to do that. Okay. So that this is like an open-ended situation.
So once again, I'd recommend that working with the Affordable Housing Trust, if you were to do what I had just said, we could have a grant agreement that they submit to us the cost, they commit to doing the project, and if the Affordable Housing Trust did vote to fully fund the remaining balance of the driveway. That would protect all parties and make sure that at that point. Also in the grant agreement would be is if for whatever reason the cost was to escalate above 300,000, that it's clearly understood that Construct would be taking on any additional cost above and beyond that. So that can all be handled through a grant assurance agreement. So I think that, like I said, it's the only way I think you can get out of tonight, getting a decision and getting things before town meeting. I mean, if you want to just hash it out tonight, you can, but like I said, that would be, my recommendation is just shift that 50,000, give it to the Affordable Housing Trust, then let the Affordable Housing Trust deal directly with Construct and come up with a grant assurance agreement on getting that driveway completed.
But we would oversee the signed agreement.
We
The
would
signed
have a
grant.
grant agreement stipulating the conditions for getting the remaining funds in order to finish this project.
So that's grant assurance.
And then we got
This-
50.
That type of document, yes.
What do you mean? No, there's not a different one, is there?
Well, you can tweak them as far as, that's just a sample of one, we use multiple ones.
Yeah.
They could be as simple or as complex as you want to make them. Like I said, the BCAC was only 2 pages.
So it'd be 100.
Very short. The one for the library, because that was $100,000 project, and the HVAC was a much larger document. But we can do different ones, but we would use one from our legal counsel that then we would submit to Construct and say, this is the agreement if you wish to get the following money, and here's what you're committing to. It would also lay out exactly who's responsible for any escalated costs, any delay, anything like that. And I think Construct would understand that, and it's pretty typical application of any grant funds, whether it's through ARPA, CPC, or any other funding source.
Do we have any idea how much is going to be required to finish this driveway?
They stated $300,000, of which was the total project cost. 51,000's been spent. They need 250 more. There's 100,000 remaining. So it means that they'll be going before the trust for 150,000.
Up to.
Up to. It doesn't have to be the full amount. It could be a percent or whatever. Yeah.
So then basically, why can't we consider approval of the project subject to sign off of the grant document?
I don't believe you have 150,000 remaining.
We've got 100.
I was gonna say, whatever the remaining.
We have the $25,000, which we appropriated to go to the housing trust.
Specifically for only one purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have $50,000, which to be used by the Affordable Housing Trust for emergency capital funding to Pine Woods.
And that's what I was recommending you just, instead of giving it for that specific purpose, just give it to the trust and let the trust negotiate with Construct to get the driveway done.
Yeah.
And then there's another 50
Yeah, there's
for the
another
assessment study.
Right.
That came out of your administrative, I guess we could just juggle the administrative funds,
Well,
right?
it wouldn't be 50,000.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
may I speak on behalf of the trust?
yes.
The trust has spent a great deal of time considering, discussing, and one of the reasons that we are having this, shall we just call it some confusion, is that the trust has only been in existence for 6 months. And this is the first year that you have considered grants to Pine Woods through the trust. And I think at our last meeting with you, it was pretty clearly established that we had, and it's understandable that Pine Woods was confused because the preliminary meeting that you had, we said that people were going to, the individual affordable housing units, which was Construct, Heaton Court, and Riverbrook, were going to apply to you directly, and they did. But going forward, we had proposed that since you've now got the trust as your extra sources of approval, much as you have in historic preservation and in open space, that these groups would then come to us first, present their needs. We would have the appropriate time to truly study what their needs are, and that we in the future, next year, will make a considered recommendation for all of your affordable housing. So for this year, what was my understanding at your last meeting, you voted, and I think you just went over that, 25,000 goes into our general fund. 50,000 is available for the assessment, and 50,000 is available. And those have been voted and approved. Now you can always change your vote, but that's my understanding. That's where we are today. Construct has now come today and asked about its requests, its individual requests, which are separate from the ones that we as the trust have made. And at your last meeting, it's my understanding you voted, you actually had a vote about their approvals and voted those down negatively. And so we're standing here today now focusing on the driveway, which we obviously, not obviously, the trust had not had, it does not have any information about the driveway, has not been able to examine or discuss with Construct what these numbers are. It's my understanding you've allocated $150,000 so far. Is that right?
125.
What?
125.
125 total.
Yeah.
in the past, the last 2 years, that's what you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
yeah,
You're right.
it's 150.
You're right. Yeah, no, I was thinking this year. It's
No, no,
125.
I'm just saying, where do we stand at this very moment? In the past, you've given them, right, Erica, and they spent
75
50,
each year.
right? Those two bills that I gave you
Yes.
were 50, all right. So there, that's the $100,000 that you've previously allocated for the driveway, which you're now saying, June, is going to be another 150?
Yes, that's what she said.
Okay.
I think you gotta have something in writing.
If you wanted to take 50 of the emergency fund, then we wouldn't have any emergency fund to help them.
Right.
If boilers or appliances or whatever goes
Can't
out.
do appliances, but yes.
Well, forget about appliances, but whatever your needs are that become an emergency basis, we wouldn't have any specific funds. We have general funds, and if we felt that was appropriate, we could use those general funds that we have in our bank account.
All right.
But what I'm most concerned about is that we're losing track of the fact that there's so many studies that need to be done so that going forward, when we come next year, we come with information that says, this is what the studies have shown, and this is what the total fix is going to take to get Pine Woods back on its feet. And we won't have that information because, are you saying you don't want to do those studies, June? Or Jane? I don't know who wants to.
In my understanding, from what we've heard tonight, is that the construct Pine Woods does not want to accept or to request the 50,000 for doing an assessment study. So that money is currently kind of hanging out there in the middle of nowhere. We also have the 25,000 that would be used to go to the housing trust. And then the $50,000 for, to be used by the Affordable Housing Trust for emergency capital funding for Pine Woods. So that's a total of $125,000 basically going into that pot. But the question is, what pot is it going into ultimately, and who has control over it? And my understanding, and part of the reason why this has been confusing to begin with, is the at least from my understanding of it, there's been some conflict between the two organizations as to whether you can or want to work together for this purpose. And
I would say not at all. I would say
Okay.
there's been confusion. And again, in the absence of other directions from the CPA, the CPC, we followed your initial instructions to apply on our own. We work with Affordable Housing Trusts in Lenox and Great Barrington regularly. I think Randy described the current situation very well, in the sense that they're new, we're new, and we're not new, but it's a new dynamic to work with them. And so going forward, I think that totally makes sense. At this point, we do not have approval to accept to write the letter or accept the $50,000.
Do you have a sense of what this, you mentioned that the Berkshire Housing, our executive director had never been there, and that's a valid observation. Do you have a sense yourself, even if it's back of the napkin, of what over the next 10 to 15 years, for example, over a bond period, what is the aggregate need?
I don't think we can speak to that off the top of our heads. June, your magic math is better than mine if you want to try, but.
Well, we do have the needs assessment that we did, and it does, like a home inspection, it'll tell you the number of years left on a roof, that kind of thing. So the project is 17 years old, so there are 13 years left on the roofs. So in that 15-year period that you're talking about, toward the end of it, we are going to be looking at roof replacements. If we were to replace the boilers now, we would probably need to replace them again in another 15 years, because that is the nature of boilers and how they work. So yeah, there will be further needs to keep it going as long as the property is, you know, still standing. And there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't be.
June, could I just ask you, in the needs assessment, the thing that has generated most interest on the trust part is in that needs assessment. They very clearly say the next step is to get the.
I'm sorry, there's so many people talking, so all I hear is noise.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'll try again. In the needs assessment, there's very, very clear direction that the next step is to get the structural engineering study and the other engineering studies, because the $1 million does not include whatever is going to come out of these studies.
So I don't remember that part of the needs assessment. We had a structural engineering study done on the decks, and then we followed their recommendations and made those repairs.
Right.
So I think that's the only structural engineering that was referenced in the needs assessment.
I think if you check that, it's very, very clear. I spoke to the people who did your needs assessment, and I spoke to the
Randy, we gotta
people.
take this offline. This is
Okay.
not really serious.
Anyway, if we don't have the money to do those studies, then I guess the trust is going to come back to you next year and ask you for the studies again, because there won't be any documentation for any of these needs. So I'm just very disappointed to hear that you guys don't want to work with us to get this information.
This was a surprise to us. What we want to do is work on the immediate needs that are going to keep people housed. If we start losing boilers, we start losing units. That's important.
Yeah.
So that's number one to us, getting those boilers replaced.
Right, which is why we had asked for that $50,000 to have an emergency fund.
Yeah.
I agree that this needs to be offline, but
$50,000 is not going to replace all the boilers, but
We have a fiduciary responsibility to the town to know where and how much money we're committing. We can't have an open checkbook.
We're not asking for that. We're asking,
We asked for
we again
specific
followed the
dollar.
directions we were encouraged to follow.
Yeah, but come
What you
on.
choose to fund is up to you.
Yeah.
The shift was to go through the Affordable Housing Trust this year. That was unexpected. We absolutely want to work with the Affordable Housing Trust going in the future.
Yeah, my only observation on the boilers is it's $448,000. And you just acknowledge that that every 15 years you need new ones, and we're at year 13, and we only have $400,000 a year in CPC funds. And I'm a little bit concerned that there isn't a plan when we have these projects to kind of make sure that they're fully funded.
Rennie has asked for the.
I know. I'm just saying.
So two things I think are really important. Well, actually one, it's called COVID-19, and the fact that our tenants are having a really hard time making their rent. And so that makes it much more difficult for us to feed our reserves the way we intend to.
Yeah.
And so it's been an extremely tough year for everyone, I think, and especially folks who need affordable housing. I believe we're going to come out of that. We are looking at other funding sources.
Okay.
This is where we're at today.
I think, though, that we need to be very clear. The size of this, whether it's 1 million or 3 million or 5 million, it's beyond our town's capacity to fund total.
Absolutely.
And I think you know that and we know that. So we're trying to be, as a trust, to be as prudent as possible. And it seems to me that in order to get 5 million, if we have to get that amount of money, you need this basic information to be able to then fashion a $5 million plan for all the funding sources that are going to be needed. So I ask you again that the trust feels very strongly.
We don't need CPC money necessarily. We already have money, in this, in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we can put towards this. So.
Towards finding help, but if you don't want us to help you raise
So
the money.
if it turns out that we need $3 million or $5 million, June has 100% track record on getting funding through DHCD. It's just a longer process, and we need to get these immediate needs done now.
All right, so what do you want to do?
Sally?
Mike made a proposal that we vote on, so.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think that we should take the monies that we've allocated and put it towards the driveway, because that's what's right in front of us.
Right.
And try to get that piece done. That's something that we can do. And the rest of this, we can continue to sort out, I guess, is what I would suggest.
Can we get a grant document coupled with those funds?
I think we can require it.
You
We
can
have-
get an excellent model for one from Great Barrington. They do it when their CPA issues money.
Like I said, Jen, we already do them. That's
Best
after the
practices.
town meeting votes it through.
Yeah.
Best practices to do a
Yeah.
grant assurance, we can do that, no problem.
So then we just have to reallocate.
Okay, so
the monies, right?
what's your proposal?
Oh, I would make a motion that we take the 125,000 that was
There's
125, right? That we have
We have
here.
50, 50, and 25.
Yeah, so that's 125.
50 was for other emergencies, so you want to put all of it now to the driveway and nothing for other emergencies?
Where-
Would that be your preference, Jane?
Yes, it would.
So that would only leave them 25,000 to come up with, to make the 300,000.
Okay.
And so. I would
Conditional
make
on
a-
the grant agreement that Michael's.
Conditioned on the grant agreement, I would make a motion that we rename those allocations towards the driveway for
Only,
Pines.
the driveway only.
The driveway only, yeah, so that they can complete it.
Is that agreeable to you guys?
It is.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So,
But they've got to submit the grant agreement before the money.
Michael's.
Right, but that comes after the fact.
That's doable.
Yeah.
That's
Just
doable.
administrate.
Yeah.
That's not
right,
even-
so
second,
Rainey,
the motion.
does that work for you?
Well, it's whatever works for you, but my recommendation would be, or my question, it's not a recommendation. My question would be, are you going to fund it through the trust and have us
Doesn't matter.
administer it? Or
That's sort
It's
of,
an important point.
it is an important point, and that's kind of, we need to figure that out. Can you go through the housing trust for this? I mean, they will be able to expedite the money better than we can.
Before we hear from Jane.
But if you're
look at-
approving it, then it will be expedited and we can go straight through the town. Again, in keeping with what we were originally asked to do for this funding, I would prefer that it come directly from the CPA.
All right, and we already did 150 for this project directly from the CPA. It's simpler, but Jane, just so you understand, my recommendation is that the grant agreement cover all of the CPA funding for this project to date, if it's legal to do it that way. I want to basically apply whatever the grant agreement is to now this 3-year worth of applications. We need to get, this project needs to be finished. This is it for the driveway, because now we're into it for $275,000, you know?
Right, so any unexpended funds are subject to this grant agreement, correct?
No, you gotta have a commitment from a vendor saying that for 300,000, they're gonna finish the driveway.
Patrick,
I don't
just
want
for
to,
that.
what?
Yes, it would be the remaining funds that haven't been spent and money allocated at this point. We would put in the grant agreement on how it's to be used, and then any remaining costs would be at constructs.
Absolutely.
All right.
But that doesn't mean, as I understand it, that we can't not finish the project, because you know,
That would be in the agreement.
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
We're on the same page.
all right, good.
Okay,
It's
is
been
everybody
seconded.
happy?
Yep.
Everybody happy? Sort of?
So we're gonna do it with the CPA.
Semi-happy?
Yeah. And
So
we're gonna
then-
do
Thank
it-
you.
So the money is going to go directly
There's a motion on the table in a second. Can we vote?
but is it going to come directly, the request is going to go through the housing trust or going to come directly to
It doesn't
construction?
matter here. It's a CPA direct. I think it's fine.
Okay.
there'll be a signed agreement to work.
There's going to be agreement either way. The same lawyer's going to write it.
$125,000 to go toward fixing the driveway. We've had a
Finishing the driveway.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Hi, Patrick.
Yes.
Just can you have a motion to revoke the other three?
Yes, we need to revoke the other three.
I make a motion that we revoke the other 3 commitments.
Second.
All those.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
No, you're not done.
We're not done. Whoops, we're not done.
Because you have to cut the 17 cents
We
off.
have to approve the
Yes.
minutes.
But also, since you're not doing the administrative study, do you want to drop the administrative budget down to the 10,000 from the 60?
Yes.
You don't need the
Yes.
extra 50?
Yes.
We need a motion on that.
Well,
But what did we just revoke?
keeping a higher administrative budget is that something might come up and we can apply it without having to go to town meeting.
No, because you revoked the 3 articles.
We revoked the 3 articles. We're,
Erica's correct, you need to lower the.
Getting rid of those.
back on it.
so the
For
one,
clarity, what are the 3 that are being revoked?
okay, number 3, number 4,
Four.
and number 16.
Point of order, how many members does the CPC have?
9, I think, 8 or 9.
Not 10, because we're at 5. Okay, just making sure we still have a quorum.
Right, we're still good.
Okay, so those are revoked.
Okay, so we need to revoke that. The votes we've already done. We've had a motion and a second and it's been approved, so. all
Now we
right.
got to do the administrative.
Right. So we're changing the administrative request to just $10,000.
Yep. I second that.
Motion.
That was a motion.
Gary and Patrick. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. And last but not least, we need to approve the minutes from the last.
we're also going to approve a protocol that from now on, we're going to require an agreement.
We can't do that because I have to recuse myself from the Waldorf and that only leaves 4 voting members. So I think this year you got to go with the 17 cents or, I don't know.
We can just say that it's.
One of those includes something I'm recused on, so you don't.
I think we can.
sorry?
Well, you could generalize it and say that any approved amounts will be rounded up, and then it's not specific to the
Take
version.
away the individual element.
I mean, just named it in the agenda is all I'm saying. But okay, sure.
Yeah, so we're just gonna round up anything that had cents on it, just so we have nice even numbers to work
And that
with.
can just be a general procedural thing. I don't think it needs to go to any particular thing. So we'll round up. As a general procedure. And we need to approve the minutes.
Yes.
Second.
Do we have a first?
I thought you just said.
Oh, okay. All right. So minutes. I wrote the minutes, so I probably shouldn't.
I make a motion that we
Okay.
approve the minutes as submitted by.
Still second though.
All right. So minutes approved. All in favor?
I,
All right.
Motion adjourned?
Motion to adjourn.
Do you want me to start writing some grant agreements up, and then you guys can take looks at them? All right,
Yes,
perfect.
please.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, June.
Everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
Pardon the confusion, June. We love you. Or like you.
Next year, we're going to.